Welcome back for another video. I'm Ehabad, a free-to-play endgame player in Raid Shadow Legends. In this video we'll be continuing our Budget Faction Wars series. Today we're going to turn our attention to the Knights Revenants, stage 21. This is going to be a little different from my usual videos, as I recorded the run in a rush whilst the faction was open a few days ago, and I'm now doing the voiceover. Not my preferred way of doing things, but hopefully it won't detract too much. There are three main considerations when figuring out your composition for this stage. Firstly, we need a way to deal with the Valkyries in the second wave. Secondly, we need a way to kill the boss. It is the health swap boss, so consequently, it is a DPS race. Thirdly, we need enough sustain to survive. With regards to the Valkyries, we can run many different CC champions, all of which have varying degrees of RNG. The sisters, Skullcrown and Sinacia, in stun sets can work very well in a pinch. Otherwise, Miscreated Monster and Bergoth both have reasonable chances to crowd control via their A2s. Failing this, there is also a rare, Guardian, who can put up block buffs and has an A1 buff strip. If you cannot CC them, this can be a viable strategy as well. Decreased defense also works well to reduce the damage of the Valkyrie's A2 and also reduces the size of their shield. In today's example, we will use Skullcrown in a stun set and Bergoth, mostly because this is the team I first cleared the stage with nearly a year ago. At that time, I did not have Miscreated Monster, Sinacia, nor any legendary. Furthermore, both Bergoth and Rector were 50s. I subsequently ranked Bergoth to 6-star to help clear the HP secret rooms in Hard Doom Tower, as I really had no good HP champions at that time. Whilst Rector Drath I ranked to 6-star to help clear Nether Spider 110 in Doom Tower 2. With regards to the DPS race with the boss, here we'll use Faceless, who deals great damage on his A3 as it ignores all defense and shields. This is important as well for how we will clear the Valkyrie wave. With attack up, even a relatively poorly built Faceless can one-shot the Valks. If you do not have enough damage in your setup, another very viable strategy is to run a Champion in Destroy set. By reducing the boss's max HP means you have less damage to do in the 12 turns between the HP swap mechanic. This isn't a quick clear, but it can be the difference between success and failure. Lastly, for sustain, we will lean on Rector and Doom Priest. I've showcased these champions in many videos now as they're fantastic support champions. Sinacia also works very well here via HP equalizer ability. Worst case, you can run everyone in a combination of regeneration and lifesteal. Right, let's rejoin the run and see how this pans out. As you can see, we've already cleared to the second wave. The first wave was very smooth, we had no issues. We joined the second wave with all our skills off cooldown, and we immediately managed to take down one Valkyrie. We now have a relatively less smooth continuation of the run. We have both of the Valks currently crowd controlled, and we're trying to cycle back to get Faceless's A3 so as to be able to nuke someone else. In this run, we will lose champions. Skullcrown will die right now after this round of counter-attacks, and Faceless will also die throughout this run. Both of these champions are built incredibly squishy right now, relying on the fact that Rector is in the team and has that revive. Obviously, if you're trying to run this without Rector in your team, without a revived champion, you'll have to gear the champions differently to compensate for that. I would look to have a lot more defensive stats around my team and probably a different composition to account for the fact that I wouldn't be able to have someone die. Both regen and lifesteal would be viable sets to gear champions such as Faceless in to ensure that you do not have that death, whilst running multiple stun sets and relying on RNG, so likely rerunning the run multiple times until you get that perfect RNG is another strategy we could employ. What's interesting with this run is you'll see we have probably the worst luck on the second wave imaginable. We had very poor RNG with respect to the crowd control abilities. It is not a smooth run, but the fact that we're still able to get it done, even with really bad RNG, shows you that you can do it. Obviously, Rector was recently a guaranteed champion And I truly hope that you all did get her if you didn't already have a copy, because she is a fantastic support unit for so many areas of this game. Particularly, if I'm thinking Hydra, I'm thinking Hard Doom Tower, I'm thinking this faction, a great champion to help you when you need the big sustain, you need the big heals, you need a decrease attack, you need a revive. She has a great kit, and I really hope that anyone who is struggling on those parts of the game did get her when the guarantee was up. As you can see, this is a very slow, painful run. It's not an exciting clear, it's not an exciting faction itself. I think most people, when they first clear it, it's a very slow clear, it's very laboured, laborious. So let's rejoin once we're onto the boss, and we can talk through how we're going to approach that part. As we're now down to just 2 champions left to kill, we can start to make sure that we get into a position to be able to tackle the boss cleanly. So we're now looking to heal ourselves up, make sure that our skills are off cooldown once we get onto the boss. And now we're through to the boss. When I actually did this run, I was pretty tired. I wasn't really paying full attention. I make a lot of mistakes. So the boss is going to open with the buff swap mechanic on his A2. So reality is we shouldn't be buffing at this point, because the boss is going to steal our increase attack and hit us much harder than he would otherwise. We should have avoided using Doom Priest's increase attack until after the A2. At least here with Doom Priest in the team, the provokes put up by the ads will be cleansed right off. As you can see, the boss is hitting extremely hard because we did allow the increase attack to be stolen. Partly due to the way these champions are built, and partly due to our own incompetence in terms of the fight management, we will have champions die on this boss. Again, we're going to be looking at Skullcrown and Faceless as the ones that are at risk of dying. If we did build them more tanky, we would be able to survive without any casualties. But again, we have Rector here. She is able to do the revive. So for this composition, it's not a problem. You'll notice Burgoth is in no danger of dying, Doom Priest, no danger of dying, and Rector, no danger of dying. So it certainly is possible to build your champions in such a way that they're not going to be at risk of dying throughout this run. It's just those extremely squishy attack-based champions who I've built no defensive stats in whatsoever that are constantly at risk. So you can think of this boss as a 3-stage encounter. In the first stage, we need to kill the ads. So initially, we're just going to focus on killing the 2 ads as quickly as possible. In the second stage, we kill the boss the first time before the HP swap mechanic is triggered. And then the third stage, we have 12 turns to kill the boss again outright before another HP swap mechanic is triggered. It is possible to kill the boss without the HP swap ever being triggered. And to do so, you need to time your damage very carefully so as to be able to kill the boss fully between 2 turns. I'm not sure the exact HP threshold at which the boss does the HP swap, but I think it's around 25 to 30% of the boss's HP. So you need to have enough DPS throughout your entire team that you can take that amount of health down in between turns. The easiest way I've found to do this, in my experience, is to stack poisons, as all the poisons are triggered instantly at the start of the boss's turn. If you have a full debuff bar of poisons, you can easily do huge damage to the boss. You can see the boss keeps stealing Skull Crown's Unkillable, which can be annoying, but fortunately it's only a 1-turn ability, so even if we've nearly killed the boss and he does steal the Unkillable from Skull Crown, we only need to survive an additional turn and then take him down. It's another reason why Skull Crown is really not an ideal champion for this stage. I only ran Skull Crown because I didn't have any other champion that was viable. But I'd definitely recommend Sinacia, Miscreated, or many of the legendaries ahead of Skull Crown. Ultimately, as with everything in this game, it just depends on your roster, who you have available, what you're able to build. So you'll see I will attempt to line up my skills to kill the boss before the health swap mechanic is triggered, but I actually fail. So here I'm going to hold back on Faceless's A3, try and get the boss close enough to being killed that Faceless's A3 will take it down. I'm trying to gauge it at the moment. Unfortunately, although I've saved Faceless's A3, I don't manage to cycle back to Faceless before the boss takes his turn. You can see the turn meters are extremely close, just didn't quite have the right speed for it to line up. Otherwise, I think that A3 would have finished the boss off, well, at least if Faceless had had increased attack. In any case, it didn't happen, so we're on to the third stage of the boss encounter, and we have 12 turns to kill the boss outright, and obviously we want to avoid any of our champions dying. As you've seen throughout this boss encounter, once we're down to just the boss being alive, this team is fairly safe. We're not really in danger of dying. Maybe Skull Crown could, but we have the revive from Rector if that does happen. So it's a straight DPS race. We're just going through the same cycle each time. We want to avoid letting the boss take high increase attack, so we want to avoid buffing ahead of the buff swap mechanic and ensure that we buff straight after. An important one to note is if you are running Miscreated Monster, you 100% do not want that boss to steal your ally protection, as it will not only reduce your damage output considerably, it will also likely lead to you killing your Miscreated Monster. I'll let you finish watching the rest of this run, and we'll come back after and discuss the champion builds, masteries, skills, etc. as we're now approaching the end of the fight, we'll use Rector's A2 to make sure that everyone is nice and healthy, and a one last A3 from Faceless kills the boss. A new fastest time, technically only the second time I've ever cleared stage 21. You saw the screenshot of the first time I did it a long time ago, and now we've managed to do it a bit quicker this time. So Skull Crown geared in a stun set. This is the exact gearing I use for Skull Crown in all the content I run her in. A few secret rooms. She's also my campaign farmer. I've got enough accuracy to get the weaken on to help me do a bit more damage. Otherwise, just in a general damage stun set build. Mastery is done down to Helm Smasher. There aren't really any specifics that you need on the mastery side. You could easily run it without any, to be honest, and get it done. You can see Faceless in a pretty poor build, to be honest, not even 4k attack, pretty low. Decent amount of crit damage, but the build is not great. Around 200 speed would be nice to be a fraction quicker. I think we would have cycled back to that boss and been in a better position. I went for Flawless Execution because obviously the main damage dealing ability here is the A3, which ignores all defense, so you're not getting much value from Helm Smasher, as the damage on the A1 and A2 are okay, but not amazing. Rector, my Rector is built very well. I've shown Rector in other content. This Rector's built for Hydra, so the stats are beyond that which you need. In terms of masteries, I have Unshakable because I have a high resistance Rector. I also built Rector for Bommel. Doom Priest next in Relentless and Immortal. I highly recommend if you have a Doom Priest and you're able to put her in Relentless, it's by far the best set in my opinion for her. I have good HP, good survivability and good speed. The skills are booked, but they're not necessary. And in terms of masteries, I have War Master. I want my Doom Priest to be contributing a bit of damage, and I had her built for Doom Tower bosses. On to Bergoth. The build is a similar build, to be honest, to the other tanky champions. We've got good speed, good HP, good defense. I've gone for minimum crit rate because I don't want him to be critting the boss and getting the continuous heals on himself for the boss to steal. In terms of masteries, the only one of value is Evil Eye, but the only reason I got any masteries on Bergoth was for that HP secret room, not required for this room. Now, with respect to Miscreated, I didn't use him in this run, but he is a potential candidate for that Destroy set build that I mentioned. I know many people have built Miscreated in Destroy and successfully cleared this stage by using that strategy. Now, if I were going to build my Miscreated in Destroy, let's just quickly see what that build would look like. I'd be looking for good amount of defensive stats, get a decent level of HP. I'll be looking for 100% crit, as much crit damage that I can fit within the build, and obviously enough accuracy to land the A2 stun. I think that's really important if you're running Miscreated, to have the A2 stun land as much as possible. In terms of the supplementary set to go with the Destroy set, there are many options. You could go Perception, you could go Resilience, you could go Immortal. I would be looking for something around, say, 60k HP, ideally more like 2k defense, 100% crit, stack a decent amount of crit damage, between 200 and 220 speed, and around 225 to 235 accuracy. So this is a good example of how I do iterative builds. I start with a baseline of stats that may not be quite sufficient, and I leave enough scope to further the stats by rolling the gear higher or adding glyphs, and this way I can always maximize my resources. I'm never investing unnecessarily into gear or into champions beyond that which I need to clear the content. Right then, thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful for you. Please like, comment and subscribe, and any feedback is always very welcome. I will always be reading all the comments and replying where possible. I hope this helps you clear the faction and get Lydia. Good luck. See you next time.